Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I have a project build video for you. We're going to be building a GitHub profile search application using jQuery and obviously JavaScript. It's going to use the GitHub API. We're going to make an Ajax request using jQuery to the API, and we're going to fetch the user profile information. We're going to fetch the user's repositories, and we're going to display them nicely using Bootstrap. Okay, we're actually using Bootswatch, which is a custom theme service for Bootstrap. All right, so this is the application here. Now I do have a similar video, or not a similar video, but a similar project using Angular 2 on my channel. I wanted to do something a little more simple for people that aren't really into frameworks and all that, just starting to learn JavaScript and jQuery. So we're just going to use jQuery for this. Okay, it's going to be pretty simple. It's under 100 lines of code of JavaScript. So how it works is we just have this search form here, and as soon as we type something into it, for instance, I'll just put a B in there, it's going to go and fetch whatever user profile comes back for B. All right, so which is this Benjamin Black. Now if I go and I keep typing, for instance, BR, it's going to get whatever is in BR. Okay, I'll keep typing. That's what's in BRA. That's what comes back for Brad. And then as I type, you'll see that nothing's coming back because there is no profile with this name. But once I get to my name, it will fetch that profile. All right, now you can see we're getting the avatar, the button to visit the profile. We have some labels up here, the repos, the gists, followers, company, website, location, member since, and then down here we're getting the latest repos. Okay, these are the latest 5 repos, and you can easily change that number if you want. And this displays the description, the forks, watchers, stars, and then a link to the repo page. Alright, so that's what we'll be building, guys. Hopefully you enjoy it. Let's get started. Alright guys, so before we get started on our application, we need to just register it with GitHub. Now, you don't need to do this to work with the API, but if you don't, your application will only get about 50 requests per hour. So it'll eventually stop working, and you don't want that. This is really simple. Just go to github.com/settings/applications/new. Give it a name, so something like GitHub. We're going to call it GitHub Finder. Homepage. You can just use your local host, put an app description, something like simple GitHub profile finder, and then authorization URL. You can use localhost as well. Now I already have one created, so I'm not going to push this, but you want to go ahead and save register application. All right, and once you do that, you should have that listed here in your applications. All right, now this I've had this from a while ago, I think from the Angular 2 version, and you just want your client ID and your client secret, so we're going to keep this open so we can plug that in later on. All right, next thing we're going to do is, actually let's go ahead and create our folder. Now I'm not going to even use a server, I'm just going to do this right on my desktop. All right, so let's say GitHub Finder. All right, and then inside there we're going to create our index.html file. Okay, let's create a CSS folder. We're actually going to use the Bootstrap CDN, so we're not going to include Bootstrap here. Or you can if you want, but we're actually going to use a custom Bootswatch theme. But right here, what I want to do is just have a regular or a standard style CSS, in case you want to add any extra styles. And then we'll create a JS folder. Whoops, not a JS shortcut. Folder JS. And then we're only going to have one JavaScript file. Okay, so that's going to be main.js. Okay, so that's pretty much our file structure. Now I'm going to open this in my editor. And I'm using Atom, which you can get at atom.io. Really nice text editor, has a lot of features. But what we're going to do is open up a project folder, and I have this on my desktop, GitHub Finder. Okay, let's open up index.html. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to getbootstrap.com, and I'm going to just get some default HTML stuff from, if we go to getting started and then examples, we're going to grab this starter template right here and do a Control U. Okay, then I'm going to copy everything here, all the source code, and paste it in index.html. Alright, so what we're going to do is just kind of take out what we don't need. So this comment here down to here, we don't need that stuff. Title, let's change that to GitHub Finder. Okay, we'll leave this here and then get rid of everything else in the head. Alright, now, like I said, we're using Bootswatch, so we're going to go to, I think it's bootswatch.com, and you see that there's all these different styles that we can use. We're going to grab this simplex. Okay, so if we click download, it'll take us to the actual file, and what I'm going to do is just copy this link here and throw that in right here. Okay, we're also going to want to include our style.css. Okay, so that's going to be css/style.css. Alright, and then we're going to get rid of, let's see, we're going to keep the nav bar. Actually, we're going to keep all that. And down here, we don't want, actually, we'll just get rid of all these scripts right here. Alright, now for the Bootstrap JavaScript file, we're going to use, say bootstrap cdn, and it's bootstrapcdn.com, and we're just going to grab this JavaScript link right here. Okay, we don't need the CSS because that's coming from the Bootswatch, but let's go ahead and stick that down here. Okay, so we'll paste that link in. Now we're also going to need our main.js that we created. So that's in the JS folder. Okay, now we're also going to need jQuery, obviously, so let's say jQuery CDN. And then we're going to use jQuery 3.x uncompressed. Grab that script tag. And we're going to put that right at the top here. Okay, make sure that that's above the other ones. And that should do it. So let's save, and then let's open up index.html. Okay, so it should look like that. Now the content is under the nav bar, so to fix that, we're just going to remove this nav bar fixed top class. Save that, and there we go. So we have our basic styling, and we can close up these other tabs here. Okay, we'll leave the OAuth open. We'll probably also need Get Bootstrap at some point. So let's go ahead and go back to our index file, and we're going to, let's see, go to the nav bar, and let's change the project name to GitHub Finder. Now this is a single page app. We don't need any of these links, so we'll get rid of all the LIs. Alright, and then down here, let's change this starter template class. We'll just change that to search container, and then in the H1 we'll say search GitHub users, and let's change this paragraph. I'm just going to make this bigger. Alright, so in the paragraph, let's say enter a username to fetch a user's profile info, and repos. Okay, then under that we're going to put an input, give it a type of text. We're going to give it an ID so that we can latch onto it later. We'll call it search user. Okay, let's give it a Bootstrap class of form control. and a placeholder, and we'll just say GitHub username. Alright, and then we're going to put a line break under that search container, and then we're going to have a div with the ID of profile. Okay, so this is where the results of our Ajax request will go, our formatted HTML. So let's save that. Okay, let's look at that, and that should be what you have so far. Alright, and that's pretty much it as far as the HTML file. The rest we're going to do all in our JavaScript file. Alright, so let's go to main.js. Alright, now we're using jQuery, so what we're going to have to do first is just say document.ready. Now, if you don't know jQuery, I would suggest watching my jQuery series. I think there's 7 or 8 videos that I have, all the basics, all the fundamentals of jQuery, because I'm not going to go through every single thing here. Alright, so let's say ready, then we're going to put in a callback here. And what this does is just that, it lets us know when the document's ready, when it's finished loading, and we can proceed. So let's just do a console.log, and we'll just say ready. Save that. Okay, let's go back. Let's hit F12 to open up the Chrome Tools console. It should also, if you're using Firefox, it should also open up the tools there as well. Alright, so now you can see down here it says ready. That means we're connected. Everything's ready to go. Alright, so what we want to happen is when we start to type, we want to make an Ajax request to the GitHub API. Alright, so let me just show you in another window here. If we say api.github.com/users/ and then a username, it gives us all this profile information. So we want to make a request to this URL. Alright, but we want to do it with the user, whatever is typed in here. So we need an event for when we start to type to catch what we're typing. Alright, so to do that, remember that input has an ID of search user, so we're going to use jQuery, and we're going to say the ID of search user. Okay, so we want an event handler here, and we want to use the key up event, okay, because when we start to type. So we're going to say on, and then here the event name, which is key up. Okay, and then second parameter is going to be a callback function. Alright, so let's say console.log key pressed. Okay, so let's go ahead and reload, and now if I hit something, we get key pressed. If I keep typing, you'll see it'll keep doing it. Alright, so what we want to do is get whatever we're typing in, and we can do that by passing in this event parameter, and then let's do console.log e.target.value. Okay, that'll give us the value of what we type in. So let's reload, and we'll just say test, and you can see every time I type, it's gonna go ahead and log that. Alright, so that's what we want. So what I'm going to do is create a variable and put that in it. Alright, so we'll say let's call this username, and that's going to be set to whatever we pass in. Alright, so now what we want to do is make our Ajax request. Alright, so let's say make request to GitHub. Now with jQuery, it makes it a lot easier than if we were just using standard JavaScript. There's a lot of different functions we could use. We're going to use the Ajax function. So to do that, we do $.ajax. Alright, and then that's going to take in an object with our parameters or our values. So we want to put in our URL. Now the URL is going to be this here. So let's grab that, and we'll paste that in. Now obviously we don't always want to get my profile, we want to get whatever is typed in. So we're going to get rid of this Brad Traversy here, and then we're just going to concatenate the username, okay, that's being typed in. All right, now, as I said, if you don't register your application and use your client ID and client secret, you'll only get about 50 requests, I believe, per hour. So we want to make sure we add that. So we're going to send data along with this. All right, and we want to send the client ID. Okay, and we also want the client secret. Okay, so let's go back to that OAuth, to that GitHub page here, and let's grab client ID. Okay, let's also grab the secret. Put that in there as well. And that should do it. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to go to the end of this Ajax function here, and we want to say .done. Okay, because it returns a promise. And then that's going to take a callback function. Okay, and then that's going to pass our data back. All right, now I'm not going to call this data. I'm going to call this user because that's what the data is. All right, now what I'm going to do is just console.log user. All right, so it makes the request to this URL, sending along our credentials, and then it gives us back this user object. So let's go ahead and save that. And now if we go and I type in B, you'll see we get this object back, and if we look at it, it has all that profile information for B, for Benjamin Black. All right, and every time I type, you can't see it, but it's making requests. Okay, the last one you'll see is the last thing I typed in, which is my profile. All right, so it gives us all this stuff. So what we want to do now is we want to take all that stuff and put it into our HTML. Okay, so we have an ID of profile, so that's where we want to stick everything. So let's get rid of this console log, and we're going to say ID profile, and we're going to use jQuery function HTML. All right, now I'm going to use template literals, which are part of the ES6 syntax. And what it allows us to do is we can use multiple lines, we can insert variables, instead of having to concatenate everything with using quotes. So I'm going to put in backticks instead. Okay, that way we can kind of treat this like a regular HTML file. And we can actually use variables, so we can say money sign and then some curly braces, take that user, and let's get the name value from it. Okay, because if we look at the response we get, you can see right here it gives us the name. All right, so let's try that. So let's put in B, and you can see we get Benjamin Black. And as I type, it changes. Okay, so we can get all that information using this user object. All right, but I want to format this nicely using Bootstrap Panels. So if we go to getbootstrap.com and then go to Components and then Panels, I'm going to grab this right here, which is the panel with a header. Okay, and we'll just paste that in. Paste that in right there. And then I want to put the name up here in the header, so we'll get rid of that, and let's go ahead and say user.name. Alright, so let's save it. And now if we go and we type in something here, you can see we get a panel with the name in the header. Okay, so now we just want to put the rest of the content in the body. Let's get rid of that. Now we're going to use the grid system here, so let's do div class row. Okay, and then we're going to have div class, say call md3, so a 3-column div, and let's do call md9. Alright, so on the 3-column, that's where our avatar is going to go. So let's put image source source, and we can get the image location from user.avatar_URL. All right, and I'm going to add the Bootstrap class of thumbnail. So let's try that. And then if I go ahead and I put in a B, you'll see we'll get his profile picture, which is very, very strange. Now, I want this image contained in the 3 column. You'll see it's a lot bigger than it should be. So I'm just going to add style right here. And let's say width 100%. Okay, so now it's smaller. Now, you could just put this in your style CSS. Actually, you know what? Let's do that. That's a cleaner way to do it. So this has a class of thumbnail. We'll also give it a class of avatar. Avatar. All right. I wasn't going to do it because I'm pretty sure this is the only style we're going to have in that file. All right, so under the image, we're going to have a link to the actual profile. All right, so we can get that link with user.html_URL. Okay, let's give it a class of btn primary and btn block, which will make it a block element. And we're also going to give it a target of _blank because we want it to open in another page. All right, so if we look at that, we didn't put any text. Let's say view profile. There we go. Click that. Brings us to the profile. All right, so that's it for this side. Now over here, we're going to put some other data, some other info. I want to get a bunch of labels, Bootstrap labels. So if we go and click on labels, and I'm going to grab these 4 right here, copy those, paste it in. Okay, so this first one is going to be the public repos. So let's say public repos : and then user.public_repos. Okay, next we'll have the public gists. User.public gists. Okay, let's do followers. User.followers and following. Alright, so let's do that, and then we're going to put 2 line breaks under it. And let's make sure that that works correctly. Okay, so there we go. Repos, gists, followers, and following. And then underneath it, we're going to put a list group. So UL, give it a class of list group. Okay, we're going to say li class list group item. Alright, so let's say we want the company. Okay, now all this information I'm getting from here, okay, from this request, from this response, you can see we have all this available to us. Alright, so company, let's copy that. So let's say website /blog, and this is user.blog. Let's do location. And let's do member since, and that's going to be created _at. Okay, so let's take a look at that. There we go. There's the top part of our application. So that's all the profile info. If you want to include any other thing here, you can do that. But we're going to move on, and we want to list all the repositories down here. All right, and of course, as I type, this will change. Okay. So for the repositories, we're going to need to make an additional request. We're going to make a request, and then we're going to stick it down here under the profile info. So under here, let's put in H3. We'll say page header, and let's say latest repos. Okay, then we need a placeholder for it, so I'm going to create a div with the ID of repos, just like we did with the users. And then let's go up here, and we're going to make another request. Okay, so we're going to make this request inside of this done. Okay, so let's say Ajax okay, then we'll have .done. Okay, that's going to give us back repos. Alright, now in the Ajax, let's put the URL. The URL is actually going to be this. So we can copy that. Alright, so it's going to be that and then /repos. So we just want to go /repos. Okay, still want the username there. And then we still want to send the data, this client ID stuff. So let's do that. Alright, and then we should get back the repos. So the repos, we want to basically loop through them and put them into that repos div. Now we're going to use an each loop. Actually, before we do that, let me just make sure it works. So we'll just console log repos. Okay, go ahead and do that, and you can see we're getting an array with all the different repos. And if we look over here to see what we get back, it gives us back all this information on every repository. Okay, so the ID, the name, the full name, all the owner information, and then all this stuff. So you can actually make this application much more in depth in terms of the data that you include in it, but I don't want to take too much time, so we're just going to do kind of the basics. Alright, but feel free to add to it. Alright, so let's get rid of the console log, and we're going to want to loop through that because it's an array. So let's say each. We're going to use a jQuery each loop. Oops. And this will take in the array and callback. And then this takes index and then value. Instead of value, though, I'm actually going to use repo. Okay, now we want that repos div that we created. So it has an ID of repos, and then we're going to say .html. Or no, not .html. If we do HTML, it's going to overwrite it with every iteration of the loop. So we want to do append because we want to keep adding to it. Alright, so let's put in some backticks here. Okay, and then let's see, we're gonna put every repo in a class of well, which will give it that gray background. And then we're gonna use the grid system. And this is actually gonna have 3 columns. So the first one will be call MD 7. I'm just going to copy that. So we'll have 7, then 3, then 2. Okay, so this first one is going to have the repo name and description. So I'm going to put the name inside of strong tags. So it's going to be repo.name. And I guess we can test that out up to this point. Okay, so now you can see we get all the repos with their name. Now, by default, it's going to return all of them. I actually want to just set it to 5. I also want to sort it by date. You can see it's sorted by alphabetical order. So what we can do is add to the request up here, to the data. And this API allows us to send a parameter of sort. So we want to sort by created, and we want that to be ascending. Okay, and then we also want to send per_page 5. That'll give us 5 back. Okay, so let's check that out. Now you can see it's by date, it's not alphabetical, and it's only 5. So let's go back down here, and let's put in the description. Repo.description. Alright, now this second column here is going to have the forks, watchers, and stars. And that's going to be in labels. So I'm going to go and copy 3 of these labels that we have. Paste that in there. Okay, we'll change this to repo. This is going to be forks_count. Change this to forks. This will be watchers. And stars. So repo, and it's actually stargazers count. Oh, and this should be watchers count. Alright, and then in this last one, we'll have a link, href, and we can say repo.html URL, say target, blank, class, btn default, and let's say repo page. Alright, let's save that. Let's reload. And there we go. So you can see the forks, the watchers, the stars, repo page. That'll open it up. Whoop. Something's wrong there. Oh, I forgot the money sign. And there we go. Alright, so I think that's it, guys. So we have a pretty useful application. If you want to look up, I spelled my own name wrong. If you want to look up GitHub users. Alright, so hopefully this taught you a little bit about jQuery as well as Ajax. And that's it. So if you like this, please subscribe. We have videos like this all the time. Give it a like if you liked it. And I will see you next time.